Randy back there reminded me that some of the old guys back there are deaf. And I'm sorry that I had to bring my notes. I'm getting old and I forget, and I have a lot of trash to talk, okay, for the next few minutes or so. On a serious note, though, I am very sad today. You know, really the only thing that brings me comfort today is meeting some old friends that I only see in funeral, a couple of which I have not seen in decades. Lewis, Robbie, all right, good to see you guys. And the fact that Terry was so very happy before he passed. I saw that in his demeanor a week ago Saturday when I visited him in the hospital. And he spoke about his grandkids and future events, okay, for his family. And that's where I actually met Linda and Terry for the first time. Even though in my conversations with Terry, it's almost like I'd known them for years, okay, because that's what he always talked about. Terry and I hadn't been close since high school. We were in kindergarten together. But we were very close back in high school. As anybody who has a real friendship knows, that connection really doesn't stop with distance or time. You know, those of us that have a few close friends are truly blessed, and I'm personally blessed, okay, because I've had friends like Terry. A friendship that is hard to describe, but I'm going to try, all right? Some of the good and not so good, but it's my experience with Terry and others, a few of which, okay, are in this room right now, that would testify to its truth in court, okay, if we had to go. But thank goodness the statute of limitations is long since expired, okay, for some of those experiences with Terry. But I'm not going to talk about those because this Terry told me I couldn't. So Terry and I first met in kindergarten, and we went through grade school, just like grade school friends, sometimes friends, sometimes enemies. But it wasn't until high school that we became very close friends. I can't remember really when we became close friends. I can't put my finger on it. Perhaps it was when he joined a group, okay, and we started streaking across Moorhead Street. There close to the graveyard. You know, if you guys know that area, we used to park the car behind the Eads' house in the alley between Broad Street and Moorhead Street, and another car up in the graveyard, and then we would streak across Moorhead when cars would come by to the Tucker's house. You know, Terry was such a skinny dude back then, and so white he would literally glow in the dark. Perhaps it was sneaking in the drive-in, or if we couldn't get in the drive-in legally, we would park across 62 so we could watch the R-rated movies, okay, while we had a beer or two. Perhaps it was the basketball games. Terry was always a really hardcore Central City basketball fan. And I was thinking the other day that the only time that I truly can put my finger on Terry being angry or mad or agitated was at ball games, you know, particularly, you know, when we were playing Greenville. Perhaps it was when we used to go to the bootleggers out there on Highway 70 that used to sell quarts of beer, okay, which is always nice because I'd always tell my mom, yeah, I just had one or two, which was the truth, you know. Or maybe it was drinking out at Devil's Lake or out at the river or out at the strip pits. Yeah, there's a pattern there. Perhaps it was camping out at Kentucky Lake, where we fished and we fished and we fished. Perhaps it was back in 78, it was before 78, but in 78, okay, the coal miners struck real hard, and I used to ride with Terry as he would chase non-union coal truckers, okay, you know, out of the county. Big time union guy. Perhaps it was riding the Central City Strip and chasing skirt, Charlie Daniels, REO Speedwagon, but particularly Bad Company, was always okay on the 8-track. Perhaps it was at my house one weekend when my parents were gone. We had a party, and Terry stopped a Brother Laycock from tearing up my house, punching the walls, and then coming the next day with a couple other buddies to help me patch things up before my parents got home. I really can't put my finger, the exact moment that we became close friends, but it could have been one of those times that I just mentioned, or it could have been a dozen other times that I could mention if Terry would let me, or I had another hour or so to talk to you about. So I went to college. We kind of lost touch. But at that time, he had a house on Ride Hill. Made several of those parties, a couple of which Lewis and Robbie, Mary Lynn, were at those parties, which was a lot of fun. Then I went to the Army in early 80s, and we really lost touch for years, except on that really rare occasion that I was in town, trying to visit my mom. But when we did meet, we had a great time having conversations. But it was different. It was more mature, more thoughtful. I guess by that time we started adulting a little bit. How things change, from high school, right? But some things about Terry never have changed. His politics, his love for fishing, basketball, his devotion to Jeremy, his back and forth with Artie on Facebook, but especially, his principled stance in life. Terry believed and acted as he thought best and was not really influenced by what others thought of him. In other words, he really did not care what people thought. And that's one of the traits that I most admired of him. Terry was always Terry. Probably about 5 years or so, we kind of reconnected, and then about 4 years ago, we actually had dinner for or actually coffee, for the first time in probably 2 decades. We met down at that little coffee shop down in downtown Central City and had a wonderful time talking about old times, but there was something new. He was talking about family. He'd also come to meet us some when we have lunch at the old Purple Onion. When I'm in town, sometimes we do that. But on all those occasions, he would always speak of his love for and his devotion to Linda, how proud he was and is of his son and his daughter, but especially how happy he was about being a granddad to John's sons and Linda's daughter. That's a sentimental side of Terry that I really didn't grow up with. I was used to more the kind of the curmudgeon side of Terry. And I know that that's why I know that he was very happy, before he passed, because the last time I spoke with him in the hospital, he was always speaking about his family. It really makes me very happy, to have those memories of our youth and later to discover that softer side, of Terry Doss. As a father, as a grandfather, and in my honor, especially because I'm call him my friend. Life is good.
Came by today to see you. Oh, I had to let you know. If I knew the last time that I held you was the last time, I'd have held you and never let go. Oh, we'd has kept me awake nights wondering. I lie in the dark just asking why. I've always been told you won't be called home until it's your time. I guess heaven was needing a hero, somebody just like you, brave enough to stand up for what you believe and follow it through. When I try to make it make sense in my mind, the only conclusion I come to is that heaven was needing a hero like you. I remember the last time I saw you. Oh, you held your head up proud. I laughed inside when I saw how you were standing out in the crowd. You're such a part of who I am. Now that part will just be void. No matter how much I need you now, heaven needed you more. 'Cause heaven was needing a hero, somebody just like you, brave enough to stand up for what you believe and follow it through. When I try to make it make sense in my mind, the only conclusion I come to is that heaven was needing a hero like you. Yes, heaven was needing a hero, and that's you.
I think it's going to be hard to follow, Scott. Those are really, really good stories. Well, we got to get together because I want to hear more of those. She has no bearing on our private conversations. I got notes too. Sorry, I'm going to try not to read too much, but you know, it's right. My heart. My heart's heavy today. I think my dad was a man who loved his family deeply. He taught me the value of hard work and integrity. And he taught me lessons that I don't think I even realized till recently. With his declining health in the past few months, I've kind of been preparing myself, or I thought I was. but there's really no preparing for losing a parent. It's really hard. I'm going to try and tell a few fun stories real quick. All right. I think, as far back as I can remember, my dad's been there for me. What was that? One time we skipped school I skipped school to go fishing with him. I was really little. And I got distracted by a turtle. I'm not really a fisherman. My dad loved fishing, but I was with him, and there was this turtle near the boat, and I kept just setting my minnow in right near the turtle, and it just kept biting the heads off. And he had put a new minnow on, and I'd just stick it right back in there. That's one of my earliest memories, actually, and he's told that story a few times. One of his favorite stories to tell about me, and I think this is really funny how it ends with him, is I guess they got called to a parent-teacher conference or something one time, and he goes in, and they had some problem with me. He's like, "What's the problem?" And he says, or the teacher says, "Your son just sits and stares at me. It makes me very uncomfortable." I don't remember this, but he's told this story quite a few times. And he says, "Well, are his grades good?" They're like, "Yeah, there's no problem there." He says, "This is your problem, not mine." Another one of my earliest memories is going squirrel hunting with him. This became the basis of a lot of my personal narratives I wrote in school. I was about 5, maybe, I'm not sure, and we'd just gone squirrel hunting. I had a BB gun, of course, and we went to his Uncle Zirkle's house right after, and he got out of the car to go talk to Zirkle, maybe on the porch or something, and left me in the car with a shotgun laying in the back seat. He claims the shotgun was not loaded and that my 5-year-old self got back there and loaded this gun when I had no idea what I was doing. I don't know, but I climbed in the back and started messing with that gun, and next thing you know, there's a hole in the side of the Bronco. And my dad had noticed that I was in the back and started walking back towards the Bronco, and he went down to the ground yelling that he had been shot and clutching his side. Apparently the bullet grazed him, and luckily it just grazed him. That's crazy. I'm surprised I can still hear, and I'm really thankful that he survived. But we never fixed that Bronco. It had a hole in it forever. Big hole. When I was 16, about 3 months after I got my license, we were looking for me a car, and I heard my dad say to somebody, "Well, I guess I'm going to have to get him a sports car." And I think, he was joking, but I heard that and I ran with it. So I just started looking for a sports car, and I found this, I don't know who found it. Did you find it? I don't know. Found this Trans Am at the dealership. It was an 88 Trans Am. It was awesome. And it was $8,900. That's what the list price was on it. And he said, "Well, if you can get it," he sent me and my sister to go look at it. He didn't go. And he said, "If you can get it for $5,900, I'll get it." And I don't think he thought that was going to happen. But my sister, I don't know if you met my sister. She made that happen. She just got in there and would not let them say otherwise. And I got that car. But he didn't just get me a car. I paid him monthly for that car. He wasn't about to just give me a car. There are lessons to be learned, and hard work is one of those lessons that he taught me. when I was 17, I was working at Sonic, and I got my paycheck, and I went to the bank, and I walked away with more money in the envelope. I was walking away, and I noticed there's more money in the envelope than there should have been, and I was kind of excited about that. And the first thing I did was go to Cheney's and brag to my dad, I just got all this money that I wasn't supposed to get. And he didn't like that. He didn't make me go back and return it, but he let me know just what was going to happen to the teller. It was going to come out of their pocket, and that I should really think about my actions there. And I honestly don't think I told him until just a couple years ago that I did return that money. And that's the integrity piece, right? More than once in college, he drove nearly 3 hours to Murfreesboro, Tennessee to fix my car. He never complained about that. I didn't know much about cars. One time it was just a loose battery terminal. Just needed to be tightened, and he didn't like say, "Hey, stupid," or anything like that. He could have, and he has said things like that before, but but he just took care of it and drove back home. It was a 6-hour round trip, roughly. One time there's a fire in my dorm, not in my dorm room, but in the dorm, and we couldn't go back in the dorm for like a week, and they set up a shelter. Actually, the first night I slept in my car because I didn't know what to do. It was like middle of the night. But they set up a shelter in a gymnasium for everyone. But I thought it was really cool. And looking back, it's really cool. My dad paid for me to stay in a Motel 6 all week, so I didn't have to go hang out in this shelter. In my 20s, we teamed up for a year in the Lake Malone Bass Club. We'd do these night tournaments. And like I said, I'm not really into fishing, but I love being on the water. And I love seeing sunrises on the water because we would fish all night sometimes, but a lot of times. And I liked being able to connect with my dad in doing something he loved. And we won Anglers of the Year that year with my Uncle Bobby, who finished the year out for me because I couldn't finish it. There's a really good story from one of these bass tournaments. So it was my job to get the boat ready, and he would back me down into the water, and I would go drive to the dock and wait for him, right? So he backs me into the water. I start driving, and suddenly my feet are wet. And I didn't know at the time that Ranger boats can't sink. Like, they can get level with the water, but they can't really sink. But I thought, this boat's going to the bottom of the lake, and I am a dead man. I started yelling for anyone that could help, and he came running. I made it to the dock, but that boat was down. And he jumped to the glove box, grabbed the plug. That's what I forgot, to put the drain plug in, right? He grabbed the plug, went to the back of the boat, hung off the side, told me to hang on to his ankles. I'm holding his ankles off the side of the boat, and he is face down in the water. This is at night, by the way. And put the plug in, pumped the water out, fished the tournament, 12-hour tournament after that. He was soaking wet. He didn't even really yell at me for that. He should have. Now let's see. I got so much. He loved my wife Angie like his own daughter. He always treated her so well, just like one of his own. When we got married, we lived with him for 3 months. We had bought this house, this really fixer-upper house. And for the first 3 months, he helped us renovate it, and we lived with him during that. So he would work, construction all week, and then come to my house and put in new flooring, countertops, sink, reframed windows, just so many things. He had a knack for knowing how to fix things. And I think this has definitely influenced me as I got older, because I was like, now I think, my dad could do these things. I can figure this out. Give credit to my wife here. Not long after we were married, she really thought we ought to be spending more time with Dad and Linda, so we went there every Wednesday night for dinner. She set that up. We'd eat dinner and watch Lost. And that went on for nearly 2 years until we moved to Bowling Green. When I was 30, he took me down in the mines. I had to watch this training video, and he wanted me to see what the mines looked like, and I'll never forget that. He told me he wanted me to see what it was like, and that he was glad that I didn't have to do this type of work. Side note, I don't think there's anything more honorable than the work he did. I think he found his true calling, and Scott talked about this, as a granddad. When both my kids were born, my dad couldn't have been more excited, and I'm sure my sister experienced that before me with her kids. But I saw a change in my dad after that, a softness. He was the best granddad to his grandkids, and he loved them so much. Trips to Granddad's house were epic for my kids. And he was always ready for them with special activities planned, whether it was BB guns, riding in a golf cart, gingerbread houses, or a trip somewhere. He'd watch Sam sometimes to give me a break when my wife used to travel a lot for work. And lots of times he would meet me halfway in Morgantown to hand off the kids, but other times he would drive all the way to Bowling Green because he said, I know you're busy, and I know this is easier for you. And that didn't go unnoticed. I'm really glad we got to go to Orange Beach last year before he started his chemo treatments. He went through surgery and chemo treatments and was so happy to announce to us last Christmas that he was in remission. Sorry. I can't tell you how many ways he's been there for me throughout my life, and lots of ways that I didn't realize until I became a father. I'm grateful for the man he was, for the life he lived, and for the profound impact he had on my life.
I'm not going to be near as eloquent as either one of those people, just so you know. Probably cry, probably mess up. I just wrote notes, like snippets, so it'll probably make no sense in the sequence in which I tell it. But I was a daddy's girl, for sure. I lived with him for a good portion of my life, out of town from here, and, he was someone I could tell anything to. That's the kind of relationship he created with me. He made sure I wasn't afraid to tell him things and kept things open. But, my childhood was full of, I feel like there was full of adventures as well. We were always at Kentucky Lake, or we were staying at a cabin at Kentucky Lake that a friend of his owned. And I remember going there one time and Mom screaming because I think there was a mouse in the bathroom when we got there. It was rustic cabin, like seriously rustic. And I remember one time I was there and we had the BB guns, and he taught us gun safety and different things. And I had went down to shoot the BB gun, and I didn't tell anybody this at the time, but I had set up a piece of wood, and I was a little too close to that piece of wood. I probably could have lost my eye. I think I shot the BB and it came back and hit me right here. I didn't tell anybody about that back then. But we used to do all kinds of fun things. I mean, we were constantly on the lake. We were water skiing. We were on Green River. He kept it adventurous. We went camping. We tent camped. I tent camped, just so you guys know. I'm a glamper now. I don't tent camp, but we had three-wheelers that we rode all over the place at my grandmother's house, or my great-grandmother's house. She had a big yard, and we would ride around there. And then before they built the bypass, we would, it was dirt road, and we would go back there and ride in it. Right behind the community oxygen where it is now, there's a steep hill. We used to three-wheeler down that thing and up that thing. I thought we were going to flip over. I don't know what we were thinking. We were like, I don't know, 10 and 7. I have no idea. We should have been riding three-wheelers up this hill. It's pretty steep. I remember one time I rode a three-wheeler in the backyard and flipped it up a tree, and it landed on top of me. But I didn't get hurt too bad, just a blood blister on my thumb. But I probably got in trouble for that one. But I was wearing my helmet because he made sure we always wore our helmets. So he was definitely Mr. Fix-It, as John talked about. Like, that's when I think about Dad. If there was something that needed to be fixed, he could have done it. He was definitely that guy. He could figure it out, and how to fix it. So like that, I expected every man to be that way. They're not, but Aaron does a great job. Don't get me wrong. Right before we came here the other night, he went to move to get his suit out of the closet, and the whole rail fell off, so he had to fix that before he could come here today. So I gotta fix the guy, but we did have a lot of fun growing up. I was telling this story the other night, and my brother doesn't remember it. When my parents got divorced, my dad had a little bit of a midlife crisis, maybe. He was 30, so he started living it up, and we were hanging out with his friends a lot. And speaking of that Trans Am, right? We had a Trans Am before that. Like, we had one when we were kids that had T-tops, and John's had T-tops too, but ours was blue. And we would drive it around town with his friends and shoot water guns at each other. And so you'd just pass each other, do the whip, like, whatever that is, your tree, and before they yell at you for doing that kind of thing. And we would hit, and one of his best friends was the state trooper, so, like, we didn't get in trouble for this. We got away with a lot that way, but we had water gun fights. So, I remember doing those kinds of crazy things as a kid. He taught me to speak my mind, to stand up for myself, and to definitely not let anybody roll over me. But if I rolled my eyes at him, I was grounded. So, and let me just tell you, I spent a lot of time grounded. But he taught me to be that way. I don't really know why he turned the tables on me, but he did. But he was always there if we needed something. John and I were telling some stories last night, and it was funny because I wrote something down, and he said, "Oh yeah, I was going to tell that story." It was a different story, but basically exactly the same. I had driven some kids. I worked for a mental health facility, and we did a summer camp, and we had taken these kids to Lake Malone. And it was over. It was hot. It had been hot. I thought, I'm going to cool my truck down. So I started my truck, and then I thought, all these kids, I can't leave my truck unlocked. So I locked it and shut the door with the keys running. Right? So Dad had to drive all the way to Lake Malone with the spare keys to unlock my running truck. Well, apparently John did the same thing one time at Lake Malone, locked his keys in his truck, and Dad had to come and unlock it while it was running. So we apparently like to burn a lot of gas going nowhere. One time John and I were we'd taken the boat out, and we couldn't get it started. We were out on the water. We'd been out on the water for a while. Somebody else was with us. I don't remember who exactly else was with us, but we just couldn't get it started no matter what we did. So finally we got a hold of him. Of course, we're at Lake Malone. Lake Malone just seemed to be a place he needed to rescue us from. So he came to Lake Malone, found somebody with a boat to take him out to us. We had just flooded the engine. It was fine. There was nothing. We just waited a little bit longer. We could have started it ourselves probably. But again, he made that journey. He didn't ask any questions. We didn't get in trouble. We didn't get called stupid. It was just funny to him. He was like, laughed it off. Let's see. He always treated my friends like they were his own. That's one thing I can say. He talked about them like they were his own. If I had things that they were celebrating, he would celebrate it. I had so many people messaging me this week saying, I loved your dad. He always treated me like I was his. So I think that's a testament to him, and especially being a single dad with a daughter, and parents trusted, having girlfriends come over and all of that. And he'd get right in there with us. He went on a mission trip with me for church and took all of us youth group down to North Carolina. We always made a lot of trips to the beach. I got my love of the beach from my dad. He loved the beach, and that's my happy place. I love to be there, just enjoying the sand. I don't normally like to get up early, but you take me to the beach and I'm out there on that balcony or down there walking on the water. Because every time I ever went to the beach, so was he. He was up early. He was out there watching it. So I kind of got that from him. My eyes are bad. I'm going to scoot that up there a little bit more. Growing up too, this UK stuff you see over here, he was a diehard UK fan. So I grew up cheering Go Big Blue all the time, and we would sit and watch ball games together every game. We'd watch ball games together. It was definitely a tradition. He'd get all decked out and have the special socks and all that. And then we'd even go to football games. We went to a big football game one time. Matt was along with that one, and Tom, and we got to go down to see a bowl game. That was a big deal to him. He really enjoyed that. I was so happy when he met Linda, because she's been an amazing part of our family. She was here. She's proven that with all taking care of him. And, instant part of our family. I lived there for a long time with them. One time he came to the lake where we lived on a little lake house whenever Aaron and I first got married. And one time he came up to visit, and I'm like, where's Linda? And he's like, oh, I left her. And he liked to pick on people a lot. So he let us believe that they had split up. And the first thing we said to him was, what did you do? And you better fix it. And he thought that was great, but he was just messing with people. He always loved to mess with people. So, speaking of messing with people, boyfriends. I told you I'd be all over the place because I'm going back and forth. He always had to talk to a boyfriend I was going to go out with on the phone and talk about how he was cleaning his shotguns and different things. And he had them scared to death before they came to the house all the time. The only one he didn't do that with is over there, so he didn't scare that one off. He didn't have to meet Aaron for some reason. He knew his mom because she was our insurance agent. That's not how we met. We didn't even know each other. We didn't even know that was the thing, that my dad knew his mom. But he didn't have to meet him, so he stuck around. He didn't get shot at or anything. But I did have a boyfriend once. This is the kind of guy my dad was. I did have a boyfriend once who I broke up with, and he threatened to hurt himself, and I was real upset about that. And my dad took him. The boy came back to the door after he'd left, and I told my dad what he said, because remember, Dad, I told him everything. And the boy came to the door, and Dad answered the door, and the kid wanted to talk to me again, and he's like, I don't think so. And he's like, but he threw him up against a wall, and he said, I hear you want to die, I can make that happen. So he was protective of his little girl. And obviously, he wasn't going after that guy, but he definitely let him know not to try to manipulate me or whatever with those kinds of things. But that's a memory that I love to laugh about. I don't know if the guy laughs about it, but it's funny to me. And then the grandkids. The grandkids came. Those girls, whew. He had them all the time. Well, I came down and visited a lot with them, but if he could get them, he had them. And they each had they each had special moments with him. He, you know, once they got to school, it was harder for him to get them. So like each one came along and they weren't in school, he'd try to make as many special moments as he could with them. They all got to go on a vacation with him and Linda when they were 2. Sometimes it was to the mountains, sometimes it was to the beach. So they definitely got to go and do. He was adamant he was taking my kids to Disney for the first time they were going to Disney. And I was adamant I was taking my kids to Disney for the first time we were going to Disney. So we did take them. We took them together. But he was adamant. He was going to do it, whether I liked it or not. But those grandkids definitely meant the world to him. He took them all on those vacations and talked about them and took them shopping, spent all kinds of money. I don't think Elliot could go to his house without going to Walmart, could you, Elliot? He definitely had them stay with him as much as he could before school started. It's gonna be hard. He was a rock. So, but like his motto said, and I don't feel it today, life is good. You know, just make sure you keep that motto in the future and like think about all those things that are happening. And no matter what, he still would say life is good. So.
Took my love, took it down. I climbed a mountain and I turned around, and I saw my reflection in the snow-covered hills till the landslide brought me down. Oh, mirror in the sky, what is love? Can the child within my heart rise above? Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I've built my life around you. But time makes you bolder, even children get older, and I'm getting older too. Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I've built my life around you. But time makes you bolder, even children get older, and I'm getting older too. Oh, I'm getting older too. Take my love, take it down. Climb a mountain and turn around. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, where the landslide bring it down. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, a landslide will bring it down. Oh,
I was sitting there thinking as everybody was talking, something my mom always taught me, that you preach your own funeral. And that's been showed here today through all that's been shared about Terry and through his life and the impact that he had on so many. I'm very honored to stand here today just for a few minutes. Terry and myself, we worked together. I met Terry for the first time back in the 80s through the Lake Malone Bass Club and become friends. And then later on down the road, we had the opportunity to spend time together, work together. And I can say this with all of my heart. I shared this with my wife the other night. I've never enjoyed working with anybody more than Terry Doss. We had such a good time together. He was a very unique person, put in a good way. But when I got the call the other night that what had took place, I couldn't believe it. I hadn't got to see Terry in a while. I didn't even know he'd been that sick. I was very honored a few years ago. Twice Terry had asked me to do his funeral, to speak at his funeral. And after I got the phone call the other night, and I went running upstairs and I was telling my wife about it, this verse come to my heart. And I believe it's a very strong verse that says so much about Terry's life, out of James chapter 4. It says, whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow. Terry lived every day to the fullest. Every day that I've got to spend with him, the stories that each one of you have shared here today. And it goes on and says, for what is your life? Terry loved life. He loved his family. Many, many days of me and him working together, he talked about his family. Times I'd see him, he would talk about the trips that they went on and just me and him just having just a good time together. I shared this Sunday morning, and I've never shared this before. My wife didn't even know this. I shared it out of the pulpit actually. When Terry and myself was working together, that was the time that I was running from the calling to preach. And Terry and myself was at Duval's Chapel, and we was painting the sanctuary. And a funny story to that, Terry was watching me roll the paint on the walls one day, and he walked over and he said, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to paint. I said, what do you mean I don't know how to paint? He said, look at your hands. And I looked at my hands. I had little white specks on there. He said, you don't know what you're doing. So he showed me how to do the roller. So that's caused me a lot of work because now my wife wants me to paint all the time. And every time she mentions painting, I think of Terry Doss and what he... But me and him was out there, and he had actually went outside. I thought he was still outside. And we was painting in the back of the sanctuary, or in the very back. And Terry went outside, and I walked up to the front of the church. I've never stood behind a pulpit in the church. And I was terrified. And I remember standing there beside that pulpit just looking at it. And finally I took a step and I stood behind it just for a minute and looked out into the church. And I walked back out and I went back up there and we was actually laying on the floor painting overhead. And Terry started to encourage me that you can do it. You can do it. And I'll never forget that moment in my life that Terry, me and him talking, and that the encouragement that he gave me. And I thank the Lord for that. I can share many, many stories of Terry and myself together that I'll always be grateful for. I remember that when Eugene and Terry got the Ranger, I remember when they pulled it in front of Cheney's, the restaurant up there, and everybody was going up there and looking at this Ranger. You know, to that point, the only time you seen Rangers was when we watched the Bassmasters. And me and Terry was working one day, and we got to talk about fishing a tube. And Terry said, I can't believe you don't know how to fish a tube. And so that day after we got off, we went to Lake Malone. And for the first time, I ever rode in a Ranger. That was with Terry in his boat. And we fished that evening, and we got ready to head back to the ramp. And Terry sat down on the passenger side. And he says, drive it. Terry's the reason why I've got a Ranger today sitting in my garage. When I got my very first Ranger, Terry was one of the first ones I called to tell him that I had a Ranger. I'd had everything else but a Ranger. And I'll never forget that time, how excited I was that he let me do that. Be moments like that that I will always hold on to when I think about Terry. And he taught me so much about the love for his family and for his friends. And I was sitting and looking at Matt sitting back there, that how excited that Terry was. Terry told me, he said, Matt's going big. He's going to do it. He told me that over and over. And guys, I tell you here today, everyone, family, friends, everybody that's here in this sanctuary today, you're blessed to know Terry Doss. Terry Doss will be a man that will certainly never be forgotten. Now, I didn't know him in the earlier days. I knew him in the older days. And I know the love that he had for his brothers. I remember going over there and visiting him one day, and I think some kind of wrestling madness or something was coming on that night, and they was all going to watch it. And just as they was talking about him getting all excited about Kentucky games and everything, and I remember how excited he was for that night that he was going to have for his brother and the time that they was going to have together. Them were things that you can always hold on to, always hold very, very dear to your heart. I could stand here and talk for hours about Terry, but I believe everything that's needed to be said has been said here today. But this verse that goes on, and it says, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. This verse is telling us no matter how long we live, life's short. No matter how long we're here, what age we are. And Terry has been such a great mentor to many to live every single day to the fullest. Love your family with all of your heart. Build those memories and them times that life is so short that passes by. That when you come to this moment, I was thinking as the son stood and talked a while ago, I've sat in your seat. I've been there. I know what that feels like. I remember at my dad's funeral that Joe Ben Tucker, the night of visitation, he come in and put his hands up on my shoulder and he said, I want you to do something tomorrow. He said, I want you to stand up and talk at your dad's funeral. And I thought, there is no way that I'm going to be able to stand up and talk at my dad's funeral. So I talked to the guys that was doing my dad's funeral, and I said, when it comes that moment, if I can do it, I'll do it. If I can't, I won't, and won't nobody know, and we'll go on. But when that moment come, and I walked and I stood behind the pulpit, and just as the stories that you shared, just from a little boy, of the memories that I had with my dad, even though my heart was so heavy, and I know how heartbroken you are, but I thank God for those memories. I thank God for them times from just doing little dumb things all the way up. That a love that they show that we can hold on to and we can pass on to others that will always be an encourager. Whatever, bow your head with me. Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we know as many sits here today, Lord, that hearts are heavy. But Lord, we thank you today, Lord, just for this what's been shared here today, that Lord, just the influence that Terry's made on so many lives, Lord. And Lord, we pray as their hearts are heavy, Lord, and as they leave here in just a few minutes, Lord, that they hold on to these memories. And Lord, when them days comes that you don't feel like you can take another step, that, Lord, these memories that they've had together, that, Lord, they can just hold on to. Lord, they can laugh, they can cry, or whatever it may be, Lord. But, Lord, we just thank you for putting ones in their life that, Lord, would always have that impact. Lord, we love you and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Bird